Brian?
Whole agenda.
Can you hear us, Brian?
I can, yes. Are we ready to roll?
Yeah.
All right. Prior to calling the meeting, I don't know, should I call the meeting to order and then ask for someone who's in the room to nominations for someone to chair the meeting, or do we?
Yeah,
I
that
don't
would be
remember
the,
the procedure.
through the chair, that would be the correct thing to do.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at 4:01. And if I could make a request to have nominations for a chair that's in the room due to the difficulty of trying to chair from Zoom.
I'll nominate him.
I was gonna nominate her.
Too slow.
Okay,
Would you rather me do it? I don't care.
I don't care. I just gotta find the agenda. Okay, we. Unless Andrew wanted to.
I'm great,
I
thank
didn't
you.
think
I'll
that.
pass.
Okay.
Do you accept the nomination, Director Hennegraff? Commissioner
Yes, I
Hennegraff?
do. Yes, I do, Chair
Right.
Bogo.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'll try not to be too distracted watching my grandchildren outside.
Close the blinds. Okay, so we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous people within whose traditional lands we're meeting today. Everyone's had a chance to look at the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? No? Andrew?
Yeah, something that we were discussing just very briefly here before the meeting started, that at some point it would be really might be a really good idea for us to do a site visit of all of our parks within the sub-region, and including all the city stuff, because we haven't seen all of that as well. So maybe just how do we do this, Trish? How would you suggest?
Do we have new business that you're on this? agenda?
It's on, what's the other news?
I don't see if there's any drinking business, because that would be, to me, the logical place
Yeah.
to put it.
Or through the chair, you could discuss it at next commission meeting day, like not that it's a commission meeting, but that is.
It would be a meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it under 6.8 next, commission meeting and, perks tour. I think if we're gonna do that, it makes sense to do it in the summer. Okay, so all those in favor of the agenda as amended? Opposed? Okay, let's go. Receipt of minutes, everyone's had a chance to review the minutes, any errors or omissions? No, okay, so we've received those. There are no delegations, so we're on to staff reports. I'll start with the roof about the pool area. Craig?
Yeah, Chair, I just had a hard time hearing that. Are we starting with the roof award contract?
Yeah, 6.1.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Chair. Through the chair,
Correct. So, Penny is going 6.1, so that is the, go on.
yeah, no, I just couldn't hear Joe. It just got muffled there for a sec. Yeah, through the chair, some good news. We've tendered the repairs to roof areas R1, R2, R3, and R4 in the report as per the recommendations from Evoke from 2023. And we had a budget of $1.6 million to do those 4 roof sections. And we tendered that project, and the low qualified bid came in at 1.359 million. And so even with consulting and project management, we're still 150,000 plus under budget if we award this contract to Heritage Roofing. And so that's the recommendation for the board, that this contract be awarded to Heritage Roofing for $1.359 million, and that the cost be paid from S227.
Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, just for the chair for clarity. So the actual total is 1.426 and change, like.
Yeah, through the
and-
chair, that's sorry, that's for including GST, correct?
Okay, so is that looking under, sorry, supplemental, under the project total? So you've got 1.3559, project contingency 156, consulting engineering fees 60, PM fee and site inspection 25 at 1.6. So do we have 1.6 in the budget, or do we have enough for 1.6 plus GST?
No, through the chair, we have $1.6 million in the budget.
So does that mean we're gonna be going over by the GST then?
No, through the chair, we're the project contingency at 156, if it's required, is we're not anticipating having to spend that. But the GST is actually, as a local government, and Joe, you can correct me, it's been a while since,
Correct.
but we don't actually pay GST.
Okay,
So we'll get that back.
got it. I assumed, but it's in there. So then I was really confused. So I was trying to figure out. Got it. Thank you.
So why do we include GST if we don't pay GST?
Through the chair, we actually pay GST. We get it credited back.
Rebate.
That's right.
Oh, because it's simpler that way.
I think it's the proper way for them to report.
All right. Are there any other questions? No, does someone want to move the recommendation? Seconded. All right. Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, Benny? Carried. Okay, the door replacement. Craig, is Carolyn doing? I
No,
don't
through the
see
chair.
the authors of the various reports aren't here. So are you just handling this for them?
Yes, Chair, I will represent these reports in lieu of the project managers. So we've also been working on replacing the doors on the arena exterior, including the overhead door where we can get equipment and vehicles in and out of that elevation on the arena. And so that project has been going for about a year or so, and including bringing in an architect and engineers for structural assessment, et cetera, depending on, trying to consider what we could do with that space. The good news is we tendered it, and the low qualified bid came in at $88,792. So including consulting and engineering fees and project management fees, the budget of $125,000 will only be impacted $105,000 if we award the contract to. It is called K4 Construction, was the low qualified bid at $88,792.
Sorry, is that a local construction company
They
then?
are not local. I believe they're either from the lower mainland or the valley, Fraser Valley. Could even be the Okanagan. I apologize. I can't tell you right now, but they're not local.
So, but the good news is this is again under budget.
That is correct. Yes, we all in the project will come in about $20,000 under budget.
Right. Any questions besides me butting in? No? Okay, hearing no questions, someone with the recommendation, Maria, Andy, you'll second it. Okay, all those in favor? Those, no. 6.3, the Pass Creek Park Exhibition Grounds work and the fall fair. Take it away, Carrie. Hi, Carrie.
Hello,
Hi.
thanks everyone. Yeah, so just to note as well on all of this, we actually, Joe and myself and Justin just met on site just to kind of go over everything again to make sure that, we are all on the same page with this. So it sounds like we are, so that's good news. I can go through it bit by bit, or I can just kind of say that, if you've had a chance to read through it, that most of the things that were provided to us by the Pass Creek Regional Exhibition Society on some of their needs to run the fall fair in the coming up in the fall. We looked through them all and sort of said these are the things that we can do. There's a couple of things that, you know, that will be into the future, but ultimately, we're pretty sure that we can get most of those things done, and we'll provide this information back to them, and, you know, should have an opportunity to, you know, to do the fall fair.
All right, I think we'll just, rather than going through.
I think I may have lost everybody there or something. It's blank. Hello?
I can still hear you. Gary, can you hear me?
Are we
Yeah, I
back?
can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Dave.
Yes, thanks. Oh, we're good?
Are we good?
Code.
It sounds like there's a mouse squeaking. Okay.
Feel like I'm at a dance party.
Okay, Director,
Thank you.
Commissioner David.
Yes,
go ahead.
thank you, Chair. Through the chair to Carrie, there's some trees in Bass Creek Park, Regional Park, that are not just dangerous, but are deadly, because we had an incident across the road with one of these trees where there was, I think it was a fatality. And just wondering how close an eye we're keeping on that stand of trees. I think they were cottonwood trees. And we also had a presentation on the ornithological value of those trees for, I think it was a protected species. So where are we at with what we've been doing every year to take a look at? Because those trees tend to have limbs that just suddenly drop off them. And we, at one point, I thought we had a no entry kind of area where people couldn't go into that grove. So where are we at with all of that, Joe? I think you remember all this.
Yep. So through the chair, so are we referring strictly to the exhibition grounds, or are we referring to the whole, including the campground?
The exhibition grounds and the park.
Okay. Yeah. So through the chair, so every 2 years, we do a full, we've been hiring Glacier Tree Services, and they provide us with, you know, a full assessment of the park, danger tree assessment, and work in the campground area. That's always been something that we have, you know, we've been able to do, and remove any limbs that look dangerous, and or, you know, sort of take down anything that that would be deemed dangerous. Of course, anytime you know, have anything in a black cottonwood stand, as you said, there are, you know, potential risks sometimes in some of those things. So that's why we've consistently had, you know, an outside contractor go and do all of that work and provide us with information and do the work. In terms of the exhibition grounds themselves, until this year, really, that's something that we've started to do, and we've done a bit of a walk around. And that is part of this submission, is that we would go around and look at the trees on the exhibition grounds. So when it comes to danger trees, that's one of the things that we, you know, there's a certain aspect of it is there a point of contact? Is there something that is in the direct line of something that was going to fall? So in other words, if you have a bunch of picnic tables, you have places where people are going to sit, if you have an outhouse, generally you would want to make sure that all the trees around there, you know, there's nothing that would be considered a quote unquote danger tree. And, you know, we would take care of those sort of things. In areas like in forested areas or wooded areas, those are the sort of places where we wouldn't often those, you know, we would leave those and consider those wildlife trees, because they do create an awful lot of amazing habitat for all kinds of different animals. So any place that we have a target and some place that would be dangerous, we would look at either removing or managing those trees as we went along. So that has been the program we've followed at, particularly in a campground, since I've been here. And again, the exhibition grounds is a little bit different. I would go, and actually I did have some discussions with Donna Smith, and particularly in the past, of certain trees that, you know, might look like they need to be removed. So we're on the same program this year. we'll be going around, and that was part of our agreement, that we would check and make sure that there would be no danger trees that would be in the vicinity where, things would be happening at the fall fair.
A supplemental, Chair, if that's okay?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so you said that Glacier is looking at the black cottonwood stand or trees in the campground area. Are the grounds, exhibition grounds included in Glacier's review? Because you mentioned.
It has not in the past. Through the chair, it has not in the past. And again, we actually have on staff, we have someone that can do danger tree assessment. Generally, when it comes to the campground, it's a bit different because of the use. So we are able to go around with our staff and would be able to look and say, yes, that's a danger tree. Yes, that's not a danger tree. So we can do that. We do have trained. I've had my danger tree assessment. It's expired because I don't get out there as much. Jeff has had his. Phil, now our full-time, parks worker, has his, as well as we are sort of new seasonal employee that we took on this year. He's actually a certified faller as well. So we're kind of lucky in some of those aspects that we do have a crew that can look at those things. Again, when it comes to the campground, due to the nature of the use, we would generally go and have Glacier or an outside company assess those for us and do full assessments with core. They do core sampling and they do everything to all the trees that may be of risk.
Can I make one more comment?
Of course you
Thank
can.
you, through the chair. Yeah, I all you need is one incident. I mean, it happened at the Castlegar golf, or I can't remember if it was one of the golf courses where it's
Redstone.
where a tree just came down. The black cottonwood are pernicious for limbs falling off. And we have been advised that there's certain bird species that we can't just cut these trees down to avoid problems because we're not allowed to. So I would highly recommend that we get Glacier to do a walkthrough, because now we are responsible. We've always been responsible, but I think just out of an abundance of caution, that we do have that stand within the exhibition grounds looked at by Glacier. If we're doing it in the campground, because all it takes is one incident. And like I said, I think I'm correct that not in the exhibition grounds, but across the road, there was a fatality from a black cottonwood limb drop. So that's why when the exhibition grounds are used, people wander everywhere. You can't control where they're going. And this was a big agenda item for us on a past rec commission meeting, maybe 8 years ago or 10 years ago. So we really took this seriously. And there's a huge liability issue associated with this. So that's why I believe that it's important that we do our due diligence and have Glacier go in and check it out.
Carrie?
Yeah. So through the chair, that's fine. We'd have to probably look for a financial amendment if we are going to do that and come to the commission for a little bit more money. I'm not sure that a lot of the things that we're doing here may cost. We can look at that. I'm just saying it'll probably be $10,000 to $15,000 to have that work done. So we put into the budget approximately $10,000 to $12,000 every 2 years for the campground alone. And that's for them to go do the full assessment and do all of the work, because they bring up they're either climbing the trees or they're bringing the lifts for them to do the works and things like that. So it is a big cost. And again, I'm happy to do that if that's a recommendation from the commission, to go in and have Glacier do that. Again, when it comes to the forested area in there, we can certainly put, rope that off or put some no trespassing or whatever during the fall fair specifically, to do that, to mitigate that risk this year, or do whatever the commission, wants us to do.
Thank you, Carrie. Commissioner Bogle?
Thank you very much. Through the chair to staff, thank you for this report. I like how it was there was like a question and the answers made it really easy to read. My only concern about the whole thing was, and because I'm new and maybe somebody can explain it, when we were leasing the grounds, we took, it says we took a hands-off approach to the development and operations of the ground. So is that normal in these types of leases, or is there some sort of inspection done, biannually or something, that if we can see that things are just being neglected, that maybe preventative maintenance could be done instead of waiting until we've got some serious problems? Thank you.
Through the chair, through those, so that's my part of that's my addition to the report. I think, Brian, the answer is yes. That is what should have been done, but it wasn't. So what I'm just pointing out is that sometimes in an effort to be non-confrontational, even staff for a while were directed politically not to be active on the site. So it's just a note that although whenever we have property that we actually need to hold groups to account. When we enter into a lease, we should be holding them to account. We should expect that we should be holding them to account, and we should be supporting staff to hold them to account. So all of that section is meant to point out is that the property that we got is many of the amenities are not in good shape, are not something that we can repair immediately. But in particular, that site is, I think, very, very important. I think there is a very important single event that happens there, but I think there's other things that can happen there if we bring that site up to a standard and a vision for what it should be. So that's why I suggest. And I know that when we talk to the new members of the Exhibition Society, that there is a flavor to do something different there. But we can't do that without a plan. And so even today, I would suggest, Carrie, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were going around with Justin and Brian Renwick today, there's many things that could be done. But without a plan, we're going to be chasing our tails on that site. We need to have a plan so that we can clearly say to whether it be the Fall Fair, or to another vendor, this is how you can use the site. These are the things that we will provide. These are the things that you need to do. I think right now, what that site is an effort to do a whole bunch of things not very well. I think we saw power being delivered where we're going, how is this actually being operated? So my suggestion is that the best plans come from reaching out to the community and actually finding out what the broader ideas are. And so that's what I'm suggesting. We don't have that in the financial plan this year to do, unless I'm incorrect. But I'm reading Carrie after a number of years. I can read them, and I'm right. But we should contemplate that and really do it, because there is something special there. I think that we should be able to be a place that's very active in what it does, but it needs to be set up correctly. And right now, it's not set up correctly. And I think what I see when I read that the electrical report and that kind of stuff is a group that wants to do things better, realizing there's a lot of challenges there. But I think we need to reach out broader than just that group, and make sure that we take the community in mind, because we are very, very close to a residential area. So we want to get some feedback on what that might look like. In fact, we have residents essentially right across the street. So I think we need to do some work in order to make that space as viable as it can be.
Carrie,
Yes,
did you have something?
Yeah, and just through the chair, to Joe's point, we've already had a couple of park use permit requests or requests for the park for bigger functions coming into, you say, 2026 and 2027. And at this point, like I said, I've just had to say, we can't say yes to that yet because we're still going through some assessment of some of the buildings and things like that that may be used, or the amount of power that can be used, or the things that would need to be done to actually get, I mean, a lot of the suggestion would be almost, I don't want to say start from scratch, but you'd be, you'd be doing a lot of underground things rather than overhead things, and you decide whether or not that's needed or this is needed. But, we've already looked at some of the buildings and said, yeah, those aren't even safe to kind of be in. So, we'll be, looking at the potential of sort of even removing those in the next year and things like that. But ultimately, for this, the idea was what can we do to sort of allow or to be able to get the fall fair to kind of go forward, this year. But, I think there's certainly, it is, as Joe said, I mean, every time I go there, I think what an amazing space that there's so many things that could happen there. I think we just have to figure those out, because during the management plan in 2015-16, the exhibition grounds wasn't really included in that. It was only included in that kind of business case analysis afterwards, or the sort of governance review, where it's like, how can we work, with the Pass Creek Regional Exhibition Society to better manage the site. That's kind of what came out of those reports that we did there, but there was nothing really on, what is it other than what the Pass Creek Exhibition Society was doing at the time. So almost like something where it's a plan to move forward to say, what do we want? What does the community want? And how can we make that happen?
Great, thank you. Commissioner Bogle, did you
Quick
have anything supplemental?
Yeah, just a quick supplemental. Again, thank you for that. And I'd just make a comment that I'd be extremely supportive of adding that into our budget discussions for 2026. Because there's always a case for political stuff, but there's also a heavy case for business, and enough said. I just would like to see it brought into the budget discussions for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McFadden.
Thank you. To circle back to Commissioner Davidoff's talking about trees. Carrie, I just want some clarity. So I understand like the sentiment that Commissioner Davidoff's going about safety with the trees and all of that, but I just want to circle back. Do I understand you correctly that you have staff that can do exactly what Glacier would do? And so you're saying that we can do that in-house by assessing those trees? Or I'm just trying to, because you had said that you had staff in-house that can do that assessment. Now you have a tree faller on staff. So I'm just wondering what the benefit would be if we did end up adding that to Glaciers, or if that is something we can do in-house.
So through the chair, I think, so we do have staff on that have training and certification for danger tree assessment. So they are a certified danger tree assessor. We also have someone on staff now as a seasonal employee. He also works at the Nelson Complex and Civic in the winter, which is great because we can kind of work with staff that we already have and kind of, have some of that continuity, who is a certified faller. Now, so it's kind of a tricky thing, because once we get into a forested area that there is no path, there's not something where people may walk through there, but from a park perspective, those are natural growth ways that things happen, things fall, create more habitat, all of those things. That's a sort of natural selection within a forest. And so there's a difference in someone looking at that who say has a danger tree assessment for forestry. they might go in and say, yeah, that's a danger tree, we need to take it down, right? Whereas in a park setting, you know, you would look at that and say, that's a wildlife tree. So that's not a danger tree, it's a wildlife tree. If it fell, could it hurt someone? Absolutely. But the idea is that, you know, there's no target. People aren't walking through there regularly. And so the risk of sort of that sort of thing is different than it would be if there's a tree sitting beside a picnic table or an outhouse or a place where people sit or stay for an extended period of time. That's how those sort of danger risks are assessed in that situation. Having Glacier do it, again, it's kind of the same as anything, right? Is that if we had a consultant do something and say, hey, this is, you know, exactly the way that it should be done, and staff said the same thing, sometimes it, you know, can be perceived a little bit different. In terms of Glacier doing it, just takes risk off of us or employees if something were ever to actually happen. And I think that's just the difference in the two. Having Glacier do it, again, it takes any risk and liability off of our employee who might say something and it, you know, ends up that the tree falls and hurts someone. But again, in those forested areas, I mean, my suggestion, and again, it's, you know, it's the commission's will in a sense, but you know, those are areas that those are forested. That's a black cottonwood stand forest that, you know, is supposed to be in a natural kind of setting and do what it's going to do. You know, we've restricted and closed off those areas in the past because in the Pass Creek Regional Exhibition Society had decided they wanted to try to create some campground space in there, which they went in and cut down some trees and things like that, which was, you know, one of the times we went in and said, hold on a second, you can't do that, right? That's not, especially when we did our management plan. So we have, you know, sort of blocked off those areas in terms of, you know, people to go in and camp or to, you know, spend any extended period of time. So again, you know, happy to do that. I think that when we look at what is a danger tree versus what is a wildlife tree in those settings, you know, there's an inherent risk anytime you walk through a forest. You know, there's more risk maybe if you walk through a cottonwood forest. But again, if we're not inviting people into that area and it's not someplace they go, you know, from a park perspective, we would like to leave that as a natural setting.
Yes, follow up. Thank you, Carrie. Getting the picture bigger. So two things. One, I would probably personally be more inclined to just make sure we have maybe a signage up that says, hey, you know, please use the only trails, use your own risk. This is habit, something that just signals. When I was at FCM, they talked a lot about why things cost more in Canada than other countries. And part of it was we expect the private sector to take on all the risk that we're not willing to take on. And so we end up costing way more than it needs to. And I think this might be, I think of that in this is where is that line between, we have signage that says, hey, use at your own risk, but we're not going to, you know, that it might seem appealing to go pay a consultant to go do all of this so that we can say, yes, we have paper that now we have no risk, but is that worth the cost, the extra cost? Anyways, I thought of that as you were sharing about where's that line, and I'm wondering in a normal forested area that we don't have trails and all of that, maybe it's better to go the signage route and not adding costs to, you know, some space that we probably don't want people walking in anyway. If you're saying it's natural habitat for wildlife, we probably don't want to encourage people to be walking through there. I understand they probably will, but if we can, you know, and just thoughts, I don't know.
Yeah, and through the chair, to your point, so we did have a neighbor right beside Pass Creek just over the windstorm that just happened, and a limb did fall off, you know, from a tree, and it landed and knocked their mast down on their house. So again, these things, and you know, we had been there in the past around their house, and we had limbed, you know, some of the trees and things like that within that area. From my knowledge of having a tree fall on my own house, you know, from my neighbor's property, that does kind of fall on the, you know, on the homeowner's insurance to, you know, have coverage for those sort of things. Obviously we went out there, we met with them, we provided them with a generator that they could use until Fortis has now reattached the mast. But over the weekend, you know, we did support it however we could. but again, you know, when you haven't, you know, I'm sure now they're like, we want all those trees taken down on the border of our property. And so, you know, for us, the idea is that, you know, we will, you know, try to manage, we'll go out and again, we'll look and say, is there any limbs that may be at risk? But, you know, the idea of taking down every tree is not always in the best interest of the public or the park. So again, those are things that happen, and we work with the neighbors certainly, and we will again here to make sure that we'll reduce as much risk as we possibly can. But you know, these are important trees, and they're part of our park and part of our you know, the habitat within the park. So.
Right, Commissioner Day.
Yeah, so I raise this issue because black cottonwood trees are incredibly dangerous. And we are aware of the risk. And in terms of Commissioner McFadden's point, I think Japan is, Japanese citizens are the most insured in the world, and Canada's second. So we are risk averse, and we like our insurances, and we probably do more due diligence than some other countries. But the key thing is that to do nothing is not an option. So I think we're going to throw this back at staff. Please review this, determine what you believe needs to be done to keep patrons safe at this site, and then come back to us with your recommendations at the next meeting. Is that fair?
Really, Chair, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
You carry?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't think so. I don't think what the request is not so much that we need to have an assessment done of every tree.
Yeah.
But it's just having it written down, how we're gonna manage,
The risk.
how we manage the site. And I think what I'm hearing from Carrie is that there's clearly two distinct areas in the park. There might be multiple distinct areas, but traditionally our approach is where people are, where we have the highest risk is where people stay. And so being in the park, we have a different risk management strategy than where we don't have active public things where we're attracting public into the area. So we'll look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree through the chair. Just you know, from my own person, I won't lie. That's always been. That's why we've done such due diligence within the campground, having Glacier do full assessment, not just, you know, where they go and they look at everything, because it is, you know, there's opportunity, you know, maybe in the future to move the actual campground area to someplace, you know, within that park, someplace a little different, and have that as day use or not. But I think that's for a little later conversation. But it is always been, you know, a little bit of concern having a campground, you know, within some of those stands, and that's why we do, you know, a very thorough job of those tree assessments, you know, very often at that park.
Great. I just have, I think, two things. First is I understand that this is going to be formally delivered to the Pass Creek Exhibition Society, I think, tomorrow.
Yep, through the chair tomorrow. Yep.
Online. And then is there a plan to meet with them, and or what's the next steps as far as that goes?
Yeah, through the chair, that is, I think, in there as well, is to kind of meet and talk with them. But that will be in my email tomorrow. With that will be,
Okay.
you know, when can we set up a meeting to have a discussion if needed with them. So yeah.
Great. And my last comment is with respect to the general manager note. I agree. It's a great spot, and I would like to see it more fully utilized than what it is now. We have to have more than just, you know, old time fiddlers in the Pass Creek Fall Fair or whatever it is, right? They do that. So seeing more as a place of activity within the region, I think would be really great. Okay, so there.
Chair, just a point of order.
Sorry.
So will there be, do you need a motion or is direction to staff to prepare to basically report, to investigate and report the risk mitigation plan for the Pass Creek Excavation Society grounds? Is that taken as direction, or do you require a motion, or how would you like to see this done? Chair, that would be up to you.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty clear understanding of what this
Direction.
group
Yeah.
wants, right? So I think if you can look into that, report back to us in July, Carrie, is that reasonable?
Yep, through the chair, we can do that.
I
Yep.
see you nodding.
That,
Yep.
well, that's noted in the minutes. Sure, yeah, thank you.
Okay, and there's no right, oh, sorry,
No,
so you're right there. It's
okay.
Doing everything.
I can keep on putting my hand up. It's fine. I know there's lots happening. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, through the chair, question number 8, just about the kitchen. I know in the past they've always used the kitchen and you're saying it cannot be used. If they need the kitchen, is it unsafe to use or just the stuff that they were hoping to have done will be done in time? Like, I'm just wondering so that, okay, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, so I can answer, so through the chair, there's a couple of things in there. One is where we went and just looked and we looked at the power and the amount of power. And that is one of the concerns that we have and concerns that they had about, the amperage system that's there and the twinning of where things go to. And if there's going to be people using vendors and things like that, there's likely not enough power. And it could be dangerous to sort of overload the system to be using the kitchen as well. And that needs any fryer. What we could, and we talked about this, it could be used as a wash station or something like that. So they could use it to wash their hands or potentially have a cooler on, if they wanted to keep, cold drinks for their volunteers or whatever. But in terms of a full service in the kitchen, it's our recommendation that we don't have that this year. In fact, last year it wasn't supposed to be. They had told us that they weren't using it. And then they did use it and there were some troubles and digging and gray water. And so, the recommendation is with their concerns, right, of the electrical and everything else, that the easiest thing for us to do is to block out having all of the use of that kitchen with the concern with the amount of electricity possibly being used in other areas that are off that same circuit.
Thank you.
Okay, and can I just add, because I have been talking to people from the Pass Creek Welfare Society or Exhibition Society, and not being able to use the kitchen is not a concern, and they'll be able to replace the stairs. I hope I'm not stealing anyone's thunder with that, but I'm sure you guys will talk about it. They're not worried at all about that, so. Okay, good news. Let's move on then to the Robson Rec Society lease agreement framework. Trisha, I'm so pleased to see this here, because it's a quick turnaround, right? Oh, it's really great.
Through the chair, yes, it was.
Kenny, was it fast enough?
Chair to the chair.
Take it however you like. In all seriousness, so this report aims to start the conversation about a framework. I don't expect it to be perfect at this stretch or at this point in our development, but at least starts the conversation. So just a reminder, this is property that is owned by the Robson Recreation Society, so totally different than the Pass Creek example that Carrie's been talking about. And the idea is that the request has come to us about us becoming the operator of these spaces that they want to develop into recreation amenities. So there's 3 recreation amenities. There's a multi-sport court, a playground, and then a parking lot to serve the amenities themselves. So I think I have been referring in this report to it as a park. That might not be correct. It might be better to refer it as something else. Carrie might be the better person to even ask the question of. But that's if you hear the word park, it's just purely based on the collection of amenities that are there. So this report, I'm going to jump right through to maybe 3.3, so maybe just as a reminder about some of the risks of entering into a lease agreement, where we're the operator. So currently, we have a very passionate group of people interested in seeing an amenity come to their community. And of course, that comes with lots of energy and drive and wonderful financial things that they're bringing to the table. But we also know that, of course, those things change over time, and it could evolve into something that you never know what happens when these people are no longer the people around the table. But I do think potentially through the lease agreement and or other factors that I'll talk a little bit about in the proposed solution, there's ways that we can keep an active group of people involved versus taking over and actually just operating the space and doing our thing about making this amenity available. I think the more we can figure out good ways to keep a group of people involved in meaningful opportunities to contribute back to the community, we have a greater success long term.
I think the passion is passed down from generation to generation.
Even that, even that. Just-
Sorry, Commissioner David.
Yeah, so I see this as I know that there's no motion on the floor, but the assistance being provided by the RDCK is a model that I could see working in other portions of the subregion. For example, the Glade Recreation Commission Society operates tennis courts, ball field, all kinds of amenities with no income from the rec commission, from us. And we could probably utilize this type of model to support the Glade Recreation Commission Society. The Shore Neighborhood Community Association jointly operates Shore Beach with the Nature Trust. And I could see this type of model supporting Shore Beach if we pass this today. The Pass Creek Neighborhood Association is also looking at creating amenities to the recreational amenities. So I think I like this because it's a creative way of supporting, and I think it's another way of us to be able to do flow through of community works funds to support these recreational amenities when it's through us. So that's why I support what we're doing right now, and I will be coming back with requests to do the same for what has been happening in our community for a very, very long time.
Commissioner McFadden, sorry, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just, I don't know if Gary shorted out or.
Shorted.
But,
Fun and games we're talking about.
it is. So we need to learn on this one. Because I thought the exact same thing.
Thank you.
So whether it be, so in this area, it's school district number 20. But I can tell you we're having things with groups that have traditionally operated facilities in school districts where at the board table, you're going to see a recommendation for us, for the regional district to be entering into a lease with school district number 8 over another facility on the East Shore. And it's coming around as you were talking about at FCM. Where traditional societies have been able to be the bearers of some of this work, they're not able to anymore. And that pressure is growing. So in this case, I think what we've got, I think there's a few things that this is where the work that the commission has done in the past about prioritization is going to come in. we're gonna have to be very careful of how we do this and how we set up expectations. So that's why this recommendation is not crafted as enter into a lease. It's crafted as enter into negotiations for a lease and giving the chair and the CAO the power to sign a document. Because we have to and start really fleshing this out. And I do truly believe that the group in Robson is a great case to do that work and then try and figure it out. But I can see this coming. I just want the commission to know that even though with that power of the recommendation passed by the board, it may be that we have to bring it back and say, hey, after flushing it out, these are the costs that we can see. So I think as Trish's report notes, we haven't fleshed those out yet. And we haven't fleshed out what the long-term, no matter what, when we do something, what works well today, 10 years from now, becomes a liability and an expectation. And so we don't have good mechanisms for doing that. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that this is the right thing to do in this case, because there's a tremendous amenity that can be developed here without taxpayers' dollars. But we do have to come back to you at some point in time and just say, hey, here's the check. So that's why the recommendation is crafted the way it is, because if we don't have something final to give you right now, I just want you to know that.
Very seems to come. So I clear that what you're saying is let's wait till this one is done and safely before anyone else starts queuing up
Yeah,
for the same thing. I think that makes sense too, but yeah.
and I'm not sure, Carrie, did you have something to say? I'm not sure if it's you that I'm hearing in the.
Can't see.
Nope, through the chair, nope.
Okay.
Just making sure I'm not giving you heart palpitations.
I am having heart palpitations right now of the potential more work, but I'm trying to keep that to myself.
Thank you, through the chair. So a few things looking at this. So I hear you and I hear Commissioner Davidoff, and you'll hear me say, even on the city side, like that tension between how do we capitalize on community and allow them to have movement to do what they want to do. Because I definitely, like I always say, we're better together. We got to figure this out together. But what they came saying, which was a very easy ask, of we just need a mechanism to have insurance.
Yeah.
So we need to be the operator. Now I'm looking at what you have in front of us, which is very different than that. And so I have caution giving you that freedom, not knowing those costs, because I think what they need is, sorry, I'm pointing because like what they need is a mechanism to have insurance. But now I'm seeing that the tenant, which is us, infrastructure maintenance costs, that's on us, snow removal, ground maintenance, garbage removal, parking lot cleaning, janitor service, like these are a lot of things that they didn't come and ask for. And they were planning on getting money from us to do, right? They just needed a mechanism for insurance, what I heard from them.
Yeah.
So I would like to understand from staff why those things all of a sudden now are things that we would be responsible for. And the second question I would have would be, if they're responsible for the capital and the asset management, like asset plan, what happens if all of a sudden that group does change? Do we have a mechanism then we just end the lease and it goes back to that society to figure out what they're gonna do? If they don't have the ability to do it anymore, does that all of a sudden mean it becomes our liability that we've now taken over? I just need to know, because again, we just heard it for Passport Park, we have a lot of amenities that we already own that we aren't fully paying to maintain as it is. Like we have, and that has been an argument around this table of how quickly do we get our asset management money up to the place where we are fully funding, replacing and taking care of the infrastructure that we already have. So I wrestle through I agree with you. This is an amazing amenity. I want to support them to get it done. But I also got to make sure that we aren't taking on more assets or any more work that we don't know the implications for, because budget is tight around this table for asset management already. Does that make any sense? So I guess the question would be those things is like, are these extra things that we have put in there, or was this a request from that, from the Robson
I
system?
can start. Do you want me to start? I can tell you're chomping at the bit.
Don't.
Yeah.
Few months left.
So through the chair, so you're right, their ask was insurance. But because there's a lot of detail as to, based on everything from which properties these are actually going on, so even just to give you an idea of how much work there still is behind the words on this page, the 4 property addresses that are in the recommendation right now, I can tell you that Wes came back with a property that we couldn't even pull up on our mapping. And so he's got two addresses match, a third one doesn't, a fourth one that we thought was part of it isn't apparently at all. So even things like that level of detail is still required. Then when they want insurance, us to cover the insurance, it means that our standards, practices, procedures all have to apply. So when I look, sorry,
To the Trish,
go ahead.
because it's not, it is, the insurance is ours.
Yes.
The responsibility is ours. So I just change that, word, like, just gotta change that wording a little bit to make sure, like, that's what's important. So like, it's not about us providing insurance,
Yeah.
it is about us
Again,
operating so that there is insurance.
totally get it. We're taking
Yeah.
liability on.
And so, because there was only so much opportunity to get too much information into this, I wasn't exactly sure all of the things that go into, well, for our insurance coverage to be met, our responsibilities, what are our responsibilities for parking? What can we give off as far as snow removal? Is snow removal required? Is it a parking lot we're gonna shut down and just totally block off and never use over the winter? And a host of different things like that come into play. So it's flagged to say, hey, here's a bunch of conversation pieces that right now, because I don't know. And I think Carrie, I don't know if Carrie had a chance to look at this at all, but there's a reference in here to I've called it a park management plan, which I know comes with a lot of other conversations, but basically it would also outline what are some responsibilities that we can, that our insurance allows us to give to someone else under certain expectations and supervision or management of, and what must be our responsibility to do. So there's that work. And when we were talking about a multi-sport court, a playground, and a parking lot, there were too many variables to know exactly what might be required. So you're right, some of that might change dramatically, but until that negotiation gets underway and we can go, what is actually sustainable? Because you're right, they definitely said that they were interested in being a part of the management of the park, but I don't want to make any assumptions on what we can permit them to do versus also what they actually think is sustainable long-term. And then the greater vision for how the space would actually be managed over time. Like truly, are the courts locked, on September 30th and they're just shut down for the year? Kind of like, I think we may do that with our courts over here or other sport courts. Playgrounds are sometimes just available and just kind of use at your own risk. The parking lot literally could be something that's closed, or maybe that's not even feasible based on the property or landscape that's there. So you're right, there's a lot of conversation still to come. This was meant to give you a bit of a framework. And then kind of, I'd say at the bottom of page 3 of my report, there's 4 points that sort of start talking a little bit about what that ongoing relationship would be. That's not just, here's a lease, we sign it, okay, everybody goes off and does their thing. It's how do we maintain the relationship and the responsibilities over time to kind of keep the momentum going with the group, keep a communication strategy or plan in place that helps people understand what people like Craig's team and Carrie would be identifying as to what the asset management needs actually are, so that they could go and potentially do their fundraising work and have a cooperative relationship. It all sounds great and wonderful in the administrative world. We all know that those things take a lot of effort to make successful. So to Joe's point about this as a learning opportunity, that's significant. And to Commissioner McFadden, like one of the comments you made at the last meeting was are you prepared to understand what it means to have the RDCK operate this space? And meaning all of our rules, all of our standards and expectations, fees, blah, all that stuff applies. And there might be groups, Director Davidoff, that you were talking about that may want nothing to do with that because they go, nope, nope, we're quite happy doing our own thing. Versus other people in this case, it might make perfect sense. In others, it might very well not.
So you, and then I've got Bogle, and then I've got Dave Bob.
Really quick follow-up, I just want to be clear that I want to enable them to do what they
Yeah.
want to do. That's not in a timely fashion. I just know how much red tape we have that we sometimes don't have control over. And so that's more my concern. And my concern in the recommendation is that we're going straight from like negotiations, which I get, we're trying to make sure we're timely on this, to like being able to sign and a financial impact that we may not see. So that's my concern recommendation is we're going all the way from one to the other and not knowing the implications that we may be taking on, I guess, is that. Yeah, sir. Yeah.
Commissioner Bogle.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I echo a lot of what Commissioner McFadden says. And I certainly understand that this is just offering the ability to go into negotiations for a lease. I think we're really jumping the gun if we're talking about other services already. And to Tricia's point, yes, if the RDCK is running it, there are rules, regulations, and I would fully expect that it would not be a hands-off operation like happened in the past. But having said all that, I really support it because I think it's a great idea. But I would hope that that the negotiation would be successful to get this figured out with the financial cost, but we would put something in it. I see it, recommendations for maximum of 5 years. I'd like to see like a 2-year operation, then a review by both parties to see what's working, what's not working. And I would want that before we entertain talking to any other groups through the Recreation Commission, because this is relatively new for having a volunteer group come and ask us to do this. I encourage it, think it's a great idea, but there's all sorts of things that could go south very, very quickly, unfortunately. Thank you.
On the bottom of page 3, Brian, point 1, minimum annual meetings will be held between the parties. Just point that out below the grid.
These were suggestions. Like,
Yeah. And I think that, it's all part of the discussion, right? Go ahead, Director or Commissioner.
Given everything that's been said, I still support the concept. And just for the information of the commission, when we found a funder to purchase the Schraker's Beach property, it was not cheap. I assisted with the negotiation. I drafted the park management plan using Sunshine Bay as a template, which was vetted by everybody. And what happened is that I negotiated the deal between the Schraker's Neighborhood Community Association and the Nature Trust and provided grant funding for the ongoing operation of Schraker's Beach Park. It's actually called the Kieran Galbraith Schraker's Beach Memorial Park. And I've continued to provide grant funding, including amenities such as washrooms brought in every summer, and that's since 2016.
Okay, is there anything else, or are we prepared to move on to recommendation? Oh,
Chair.
sorry.
That's okay. It was just a clarification. I knew the point about that it was going to be for all use of all the public. That wasn't what I was talking about. I was talking that the cost I was potentially thinking of costs increasing as we went on and tried to expand the use of it and stuff. That's all I meant when we look at it, to have the 2-year review, right? Was just to make sure that there wasn't hidden costs that were coming up that we hadn't planned for. It wasn't, on page 3, that comment about use for everybody, I knew that was there and that wasn't what I was implying. Just for
Commissioner
clarification.
Vogel, I was referring to point 1, the annual meetings will need to be held between parties to review the operational expenses, concerns, or upcoming needs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I was
all
thought you
right.
were talking about the bottom of page 3. Okay, disregard. Clarification not needed. I gotcha.
Not the- Maybe I should have been clear. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Vogel. Are we prepared to move forward with the recommendation?
I'll move it.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? No,
Sorry,
I'm so. You're getting choppy.
I'm just wondering what the rules are if those property addresses are incorrect until we sort that out, because the recommendation,
Yeah,
we can go with what Wes gave us.
through the chair, if you know. You can, one of the members of the commission can do a friendly amendment. And I would suggest that they do it now. And then Mark and Wes can, just make sure it's 100% correct for the board.
Okay, and so the correct addresses are 1144, 1120, and 1106. So if we can amend by removing 1130 and 1112 and putting in 1106.
Just wondering for staff, is there a way just to remove the addresses altogether and say property proposed by the Robson Recreation Center so that you're not, or is that not clear enough? I just don't want to put the wrong things and then it be something that now we have to wait till a whole nother commission meeting to
I was even more vague than that in my first recommendation.
So is there a way to say the properties recommended by the Robson Recreation Society for these amenities,
Yeah, why don't, if we said the properties owned by Robson Recreation Society
On Foxley.
on Boxley Road?
But they made.
Sure. Usually when we enter into a lease, it'll have to be listed very specifically in the lease.
In the lease, but this is just to enter into negotiation.
Yeah, so I agree.
With the motion, we
Friendly
can.
amendment, friendly amendment,
Yeah.
properties located at Foxley Road,
Properties located or owned by?
owned by the Robson
Owned
Recreation
by
Society.
Recreation.
And that's what it says, entering into a lease.
Located at lots by, yes, they do.
With Wes today.
Pearl, do you have that? Excellent. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion as amended? Opposed? Carried. Ice allocation, take away Tricia.
So just a bit of an update for everyone. I know we gave you an update at the last meeting about the youth group meeting that we had. And so then Anne and Sarah and I think that was all of us.
Yeah.
That were in the meeting with the adult groups on May 26th, so last Monday. Met with them and kind of presented with the learnings that we'd continued to gather from the youth groups. There's definitely some concern related to the seemingly available times for adults. I think generally speaking, it was somewhere between 9:30, getting on the ice, and 9:45-ish during the week. Did not sit well with people for, I would say, the better part of the meeting. We did commit to going back to the youth groups to sensitize them to the concerns about hey, if you can move your time even by 15 minutes or half an hour, it makes a considerable difference for the adult groups. I think it was received by the youth groups favorably. Whether they can do much, we don't know. And we won't really know until the submissions, and we extended their deadline by a week. So that as we learned more and shared more information, and thought we needed to give them enough time to submit information that was reasonable to us. So I think their deadline is this Sunday or something.
Yeah.
So it's continuing. We're thinking we might have a bit more information to provide to you at this meeting, but at this point we don't, and are just continuing those conversations with Anne's leadership ongoingly.
Okay, any questions on Tricia? No? Okay, let's move along then. And you provided us with the report. Do we want to just ask questions, or we've all read it? Does anyone have any questions? No, and there's no motion, so thank you for your report. See,
Yeah, is there something
Is there anything, Chair, I do have a,
okay, go ahead.
yeah, is there anything in particular that through the chair that you would like to point out to us that we may be, in our readings should have taken more notice of?
Not that, not that, not if you don't have any questions or nothing's come up for you that I could answer further, then no.
I just want to point out that it sounds like it's gonna be sunny for some test.
Oh, Andy.
It's Anne's fault. Well, thank you, Anne, for getting us sun for sun to us. Okay. No pressure for next year, right? Okay, so we have Joe's report on the Castlegar district establishment bylaws. And I think you want to give us a bit of an overview on this, if I know you're at all.
Oh, yeah, so.
So is it to the chair or is it through the chair? I, for my whole career, it's like.
If you're asking the chair questions or.
If you're asking the chair a question, it's to the chair.
Okay,
If you're asking it to sort of pass on to someone else, it's through the chair.
And if you're reporting to the commission, it's through the chair.
right. So most of the time I'm right. So, through the chair, first thing I want to point out is page 7. This is what happens when you have a thought, you say something one way and you said, oh, that's way too wordy, and make it less, but you forget an important word. So on the second paragraph on page 7 and the first line, second sentence, it says, right now, your report says, this is not work that requires architectural and construction.
It's is work.
It is work. The word not was that the thought in my head was this is not work that staff can complete on their own. Oh, that's what we're done.
Gary Jackman would have content.
Yeah, and I left the not in there. All right, so I just want to make sure that that's not what I
You know what? I've seen worse than that.
Okay,
I like. Okay.
so. The challenge, so just the recommendations. Don't stop your work. I hope you got that in that first paragraph of the background. I think this might take multiple conversations, so my intent here today was not to slay a dragon or anything, but to get us moving. Because I think there is some sense in the community that they wanna see movement. So there's really 3 parts that I always try to.
Yeah, it takes longer to shop for groceries these days, I can tell you, because people want to know what's going on.
So the first thing that you can do is recommend that the board authorize staff to prepare a service establishment bylaw and a bargaining bylaw for an expansion of the Castlegar District Community Complex service within the city of Castlegar and Area J, and further electoral area, electoral assent be sought by assent voting. The reason for that, to do that immediately, even though we may not have a project, is that it gets that process into a queue. And my understanding, I apologize for not being able to attend the last commission meeting, but getting that process going is important. So it's not so much that we have to know what the scope of that work is right now, but we definitely should get it into the queue, because it's not just work of community services to do that work. So that's a separate recommendation. It stands on its own.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. I read this and I read the report and I'm going, okay. So we're looking at amending S222 bylaws, S222 and S227. But my understanding of the discussions to this point is that we're looking at creating a new service establishment bylaw that would be that would only apply to Area J and the city of Castlegar. So my question through the chair is that why do we need to do these service amendment bylaws when we're actually going to be and go to an assent voting process, when we could create a new bylaw, service establishment bylaw, that only addressed a new project, new infrastructure project, that would be a standalone. And the key thing is that I understand that if you're doing something right next to this facility, that there's overlap. Okay, like I completely understand that. But we did manage to do that when we set up S227, not very well. But like, I think it's confusing to people and it's gonna cause questions to come up saying like, what's going on here? Like, it sounds like you're adding something and you're bringing in everybody and amending S222 and S227. And I'm thinking, should we apply the KISS principle and say, okay, here's what we're taking to the public. We want to build a new, a new amenity, and here's who's going to pay for it, and here's how it'll be operated. But why are we starting with amending S222 and S227 and talking about voting on that through an assent voting process? Because now you're creating confusion for some people. Just a sec. And I'm just saying, I think it could be cleaner potentially. Am I correct or incorrect, Commissioner?
I wouldn't place it as a correct or incorrect,
Okay,
because you're 100% correct
thank you,
that you could just create a new establishment bylaw.
thank you.
But what would be incorrect is thinking that that means anything in 10 years. So I'm going to explain that.
Okay,
Right now, service S222's establishment bylaw allows it to do everything. Absolutely everything. So in the future, it could be said that when you have bylaws that actually overlap in their definition of what they could do, that is actually what creates confusion. Because in the future, somebody else's political interpretation could change that. It's not clear to staff if you read the bylaws. So let's say, for example, S227's bylaw says nothing about operating a fitness center. Doesn't say anything. It says operate an aquatic center in the city of Castlegar. It actually doesn't define the scope of that service in any way, shape, or form. So it kind of goes two ways. If I was a director, maybe the director for area, if I consider his shoes for a second.
Good luck.
Because it's that area's taxpayers that all pay into one. Some pay into another. And then everyone's not gonna pay into another. Right? So I have that point of view. If I'm that director, I want assurances in the establishment bylaws of what those electorates, of what those communities that have been included in certain referendums are paying into. Now, we also heard, so this is everything this is everything Joe's taking into his brain as he's writing this. I've also heard during the public engagement, why don't certain people pay into certain things? So that's also happening. Also heard during that community engagement, very clearly, even in short acres, we are willing to pay for the services that we have. So you're in an interesting time. So right now, I'm trying to be careful through this report to assume what the project is. But based upon the community engagement, I believe that it might be a secondary ice service. If it is a secondary ice service, what I never heard throughout that community engagement was, we're not willing to pay for the things that we're already doing. What I did hear is, we're not willing to borrow money to build something new. So I'm trying to balance off these two things. I think they're very distinct. I think they're very distinct and different. So right now, in one bylaw, you could fund everything. In fact, like right now, if you wanted to amend, if you wanted to do it, you could literally say, Service S222 will provide all programming opportunities. Doesn't matter what part of this building it takes place in. It can do it. The bylaw says it can. What it could say is that S227 is responsible for the ongoing asset management of those facilities that it authorized to build. S222 could fund everything else within that. Just can't do that. This new one could do that exact same thing. And in fact, I think in some ways that's the cleanest way. Because it's very, I think there's different parts. What I've also heard is from those that aren't from those that are participating where somebody else isn't participating in the community, why aren't you charging them more to do that? So I'm trying to be King Solomon a little bit here. So what I think is that the commission needs to clearly define what service funds what and be very clear about it. In Nelson, we went through a service review. And in that service review, we literally went through saying, this is in, there's not multiple services even in that case. This is in, this is in, this is in, this is what the service provides funding for, very clear. And anything else outside of that realm is something that's being added to that appendix. So that's why I drew up the appendices, but let me just go through each of the recommendations. Because don't mean them to be scary, I just mean them to be for clarification. So the recommend to the board that staff be directed to prepare an amendment bylaw for the Castlegar District Community Facilities. Set to amend section 5 to define the following powers and authorities. And just to be clear, most of all of these powers and authorities are actually in there, but they're not listed. They're actually listed out even more broadly than what's in. So we don't talk about asset renewal in the bylaw. Right now, there's nothing in those establishment bylaws that talks about asset renewal. It does talk, and I'm trying to define the Castlegar District Community Complex here in what's actually existing right now. So I'm not saying, so to Director Davidoff, saying this is where we need to take some time and do this well. So right now, there's even an interesting, so bullet number 3 in that recommendation says, all aquatic and fitness programming staff, except for those staff at the Castlegar District Community Complex. What I'm trying to say there is you don't want the bylaws to determine the fact that we may want to run water safety instruction courses at the Director Davidoff, what was the name?
Shore Acres Beach.
Yeah, at Shore Acres Beach. Right? That's staff, those are aquatic staff that would go out and do that work. We would want them to be able to do that. So it's actually a chance to really get down to what we are talking about. So that's that example. I also think that all customer service staff should be paid for from S222. I think there's a discussion around it. Because that staff is actually is tasked with registering anyone from within the service area into any program that they want to go into. So like, these are the kinds of discussions that I think we could have. I want to note that even though what I'm trying to say in that recommendation is this recommendation doesn't amend the bylaw, it directs us to amend the bylaw. I'm just trying to be really clear about the points you want to talk about in that. So you could make it as simple as recommend to the board that staff be directed to prepare an amendment bylaw for Castlegar District to amend section 5 to define the service. You could end it with that sentence. You don't need to put those bullet points in. I'm just putting the bullet points in that I think you need to talk about.
Without limiting.
Without limiting.
Okay.
It's not a limiting, it's just saying that these are the topics I see right off the top that you should talk about. The third one is S227. S227 does not define it at all. It literally just says, provide an aquatic center in the city of Castlegar. I'm sitting there going, I'm reading that, I'm going, when I read S222, I'm thinking, okay, this actually doesn't say anything about operations. It doesn't say anything about maintenance. It doesn't say anything about actually providing programs at all. I'm sitting there thinking, was there actual intent at that time that it just be a bylaw to actually fund the building of the aquatic center and the asset management?
Yeah.
And that goes up. So like, and I'm not saying I'm not saying that that's what it was, but I'm saying unless we tie it together, it could be interpreted like that in the future. So we need to tie it down.
So, Joe, Commissioner Davidoff has been waiting patiently.
I know.
Question.
I was writing it. I can tell you right now, when Joe was writing this report, he was thinking of.
Oh,
Commissioner
you
Davidoff.
got it, yeah.
So I've got Commissioner Davidoff first, followed by Commissioner McFadden.
Thank you. So a couple of questions to the chair. I am the director of Area I, and I have been dealing with this issue for 14 years. Is staff recommending that electoral assent be sought by assent voting area by area, including area I, on? So just explain, please, to me how this, you're saying here, electoral assent be sought by assent voting. And when I read the report, it was by area. So basically,
Director Dave, just for clarification, which recommendation are you referring?
both of them.
There's the chair recommendation.
No, anything to do with service that amending S222 and S227, staff in the report is recommending that it be by assent voting, which would be voting.
First one is just.
The first one is just Castlegar.
And then we go into.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
so through the, yeah, a good question, I can understand.
Thank you.
Because I'm just like,
I know where you're at.
Yeah,
the report is so big that.
Yes.
So the only thing where there's assent voting is for the new service.
okay,
Right.
The other amendments,
yes.
those are completely within the power of the regional district to do.
Okay, supplemental. So basically, when we're looking at amending a bylaw, that is, the bylaw is the template that we used when we went into all this stuff. When you amend a bylaw, is still something that I will receive as a director, I will receive questions saying, what does this mean to us in terms of future taxation? When you include the bullets for discussion, which rightfully so you should, and what I see staff doing here is trying to kind of go back and say, okay, these are all the gaps. And this is in essence, it's a clarifying set of provisions to amend the bylaw. The question that will come back to me is that what is the potential taxation impact on area I, including the connection between what S222 will be, how it will be amended, and S227 will be amended, which will not go back to my constituents. This will be done at board level, and the board can overrule anything I say. And the bottom line is that if the first recommendation goes to electoral assent and is passed, will the amendments in the other two recommendations impact taxation? And will any of the money go to supporting the first one? That's the question I will receive, and I have very astute members, constituents, who question me every week and every day on everything like this. So that will be the question that I will have to answer. Will there be any impact in Area I taxation by way of these amendments if the first recommendation goes to an assent voting process within Area J in the city and is passed?
And through the chair,
And the answer, I believe, is yes.
through the chair. So this is why, to me, we need to do all three bylaws. Because that is exactly the conversation. So this is what I would say. And I think in the report I have this where I say, if the addition is an arena.
Yeah.
S222 has always funded to arenas.
Yes.
And in fact, so if you were to take it for 2024, if this thing was all flowing, in 2024, there technically would be no operational costs additional if there was a brand new building built by somebody else out there right now and it was included in. Because it's already doing it. So this is the conversation that we need to have. Because we need to define that. I've got to define that establishment bylaw. We've got to be really clear to that group. We already have a bylaw S222 right now that has no boundaries. It has no boundaries on it. So it's always going to leave you susceptible, or any director in the future susceptible to that question. Because S222 can fund everything in this service right now. Sorry, everything that is currently being funded can be funded by S222.
So can I comment? Sure.
Oh, I don't.
Through the chair, that's what this is about, yeah?
Yeah, so the key thing is my constituents and you, the commission went to every community hall, are so suspicious of the commission and these motions and everything like this to say that in essence, we don't trust you, Andy, and we don't trust the folks in the commission. Because one way or another, you're gonna find a way to increase our taxation. And what I see in the current S222 and in the bylaw the proposed amending bylaw, is that Area I will be paying for whatever Area J and the city pass as an additional recreational amenity that under S222, as S222 exists today, and including the bylaw amendment, that Area I residents will be paying for the operation of the new facility and maybe paying for the asset management plan and a whole bunch of other things that have nothing to do with the initial capital infrastructure outlay. And that is, to my constituents, is a non-starter.
And I think it's probably wise if us as not to override the chair, if we, I think, because if the concern comes to the political side, I think more than staff side, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't want to, I'm just, so you decide who speaks next, but I think we need politically, because I feel like you're getting in an argument where we need clarity between us before we start.
exactly.
Well, and I feel like this subject is really too big as a regular agenda item at a meeting. I think we need a special meeting to really hash this out and see where everyone is at and what the understandings are. Because I mean, some of us view it as we're operating two rigs now, we always have been, where's the change? And so that it's a big discussion that I think maybe we need a special meeting for. Sorry, Brian. Sorry, Commissioner Bogle, I didn't see your hand. I don't know where anyone else is at. Did you have more you wanted to say?
If it's possible,
Yeah,
yeah,
go
through the
ahead.
chair. So quickly, and we can decide if we need to postpone it. I just want to be really clear. I understand your concern with what's in front of you. I understand the skepticism of past. I get all of that. I get where staff is coming from, trying to, I don't think your intent was to tell us what to do, but to tell us we need clarity around it. So I will just say from my reading that report and where we're at, this is where I land. To really upfront. I have full intention of saying the city of Castlegar, I am prepared to go to assent voting to establish a bylaw to see if community will pay for building and replacing an asset. So full asset management plan, full building and replacing an asset. What I would like to see is that what we are currently doing, which is funding the operations of two, stays the same. That all three areas are still paying for the operating of two facilities. But the building and the asset management, the replacement of that single facility all falls under that establishment bylaw, borrowing bylaw. That's personally, and so I upfront operating of it is still all of us together. We still pay for that. So that would come under S222, the operating of it and the maintenance of it, day maintenance, but the actual, like we do right now, but the building and the full replacement of it would fall under the first bylaw. Because I feel like that is your concern, and I could be wrong, but I feel like your concern is you're not sure if we're trying to sneak something in that is unintended because of the past. So I'm just being really clear that is what I'm hoping, is that operating would still be all of us, and that would fall under S222. I think that's what Joe's trying to do by bringing clarity with those points in the bylaw. So I appreciate that. But that we would look at a bylaw for the building and asset management.
between.
Between the city and area.
JJ. Commissioner Vogel, please go ahead.
Thanks. Through the chair to Joe. Because I don't have it with me, I don't have the 2024 budget for recreation and the 2025. Other than the Pioneer closing, was there any significant differences in the operating budget? Was there any other major cuts? Or anything like that? Lori just wanted to say hello. You can wave. I don't know. Sorry about that. She had to come and say hi, so. Yeah, go ahead. So was there any significant differences, Joe, other than the closing of the Pioneer?
Through the chair, the most significant differences that almost happen every year now is just that movement of asset management money between the services. So that $1 million, or sorry, we're not $1 million this year, $800,000 this year. That is the biggest fluctuation. And then yes, the fact that you're only operating Pioneer for half a year this year, and that we do have money in the capital budget for Pioneer decommissioning.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just trying to figure out if we actually had a number on what it cost to operate the Pioneer, and I like say not having all my files here, I couldn't remember. So because just like my regional district residential taxes went down by $12.86 this past year, which is the first time I think I've ever seen a decrease in it. And I didn't know how much of that was the Pioneer and how much were other factors. But I actually had that discussion with a resident of Area I, who I consider a friend. And he had been at some of the meetings, and I was telling him that they'd actually gone down, and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to go home and check. I'll phone you if they haven't." Well, he never phoned. So I'm assuming it went down a little bit.
I think I know who your friend.
Okay, so where are we at, folks?
So, chair, like what I really want to emphasize is that the passing of the recommendations doesn't change anything now, but what it does do is give me access to other staff in the regional district
Yeah.
to help with the work, or else it primarily stays with Craig, Tricia, and my.
Yeah. So you're saying you're spread too thin, and I understand.
No, well, I actually legitimately need to be able to say to someone, I need you.
Oh, with a
Good
different
for
skill
you.
set. Okay. So do we want to talk small?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
That's okay. So I have no problem with the first recommendation. And I think I would like to move that we deal with these ad seriatim separately.
Now you're dragging that into it. Come on. What, one by one?
Yeah, one by one.
Okay, good guess. So do you want to move the first recommendation?
Well, first of all, we need a motion to deal with the med cert needs to pass.
I beg your pardon.
Why don't we have a rookie? We don't have anything on the table yet, so I think we can.
No, but I'm saying is that I think the chair wants us to address these recommendations, right?
Well, it seems to me the best way to move forward.
Yeah. And then we either vote for them or against them.
Exactly.
So the key thing is that the first, that I'm requesting that they be dealt with one at a time. So
Yeah.
number one would be recommended, 6.7.1 will be the first recommendation, 6.7.2 would be the second recommendation.
Yeah.
And 6.7.3 would be the third recommendation.
Exactly.
So that's
exactly what I envisioned.
That's my motion. So that's
So let's deal with 6.7.1.
process wise that should be passed that way. The
Yeah.
motion.
To separate them, I don't know if we.
They're they're no furthers. They stand on their own.
They stand on their own recommendations. You can do those.
Recommendation.
So we
So-
will deal with it that way. That's
Let's
fine.
just number them 1, 2, and 3 for clarity.
Yep.
And so is someone prepared to move the first recommendation? Commissioner McFadden, will someone second the first recommendation? Commissioner Vogel, thank you very much. Is there any discussion on recommendation number 1? Okay, all those in favor, please signify. Opposed, none. Okay, so recommendation 1 is carried. Recommendation number 2, is anyone prepared to move the second recommendation? Sure.
Thank you through the chair. Second recommendation is for you to go away and to prepare something to come back for us to debate if we want to change that bylaw at that point.
Yeah.
Correct? Like,
Through the chair.
I just want to make sure if we're not giving you, this is exactly what we're doing. We're saying, go away, come back with what some of this would look like. These are some of the thoughts we're gonna put into there. And then at that point, we would have a conversation over what we need to move and what we don't. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. Or through the chair, in the report, I do suggest that it's possible that we get together in a workshop format.
Okay.
To go through.
Great.
So are you moving it then?
I will move it in whatever way you need to put it so that it's in a workshop. If you need that in the recommendation, or if you're just gonna take that we have some space to discuss those details. And make sure we're all comfortable with it, then I would move it with that understanding.
Then you will second it, Director Dave?
No,
No,
actually,
is anyone gonna hang on, we've got it moved.
Yep.
And Commissioner Vogel seconds it, all right, discussion.
yeah, I like the workshop idea. I think we need to flesh 2 and 3 out a little bit more. I think that will provide the transparency, and that's how I envisioned, like, I knew that, you shared that with me before. That was kind of the vision you had for this. And I think if we workshop it, we can go through it, understand it better, then I could explain it better, saying this is what this does. And this has elements, and I really appreciate what staff has done because we do have gaps and we have an opportunity to clean stuff up. I'm just saying that we can't do it justice today, and because it's the first time we're looking at it. So what I would, the motion that I would support, that would be a motion to move recommendations 2 and 3 to a workshop session for us to review and then bring back to a commission meeting to pass the recommendation after we workshop it. And the workshop process would be that's where we do our work. And then staff could have some additional guidance on how staff could still go back and say, okay, we're going to workshop it. How do we prepare? How is this nuanced? What key elements are there? So instead of moving these recommendations, mine would be to refer 2 and 3 to a workshop.
So Director Davidoff, I just want some clarity on what your vision is, and that is, do you see us them coming with a draft bylaw amendment for us to workshop, or us workshopping and then sending them back to draft a bylaw amendment?
I think we need to workshop it and then provide staff with guidance on what type of an amending bylaw we require.
Okay, McFadden first.
You're probably gonna answer the question I was gonna ask is, from staff's perspective, what is the proper way? Because you're saying that there's nuance that you need other staff to give you insight into. So I agree that the goal is to get it in a workshop. Is it better to have that in a draft bylaw form at that point and then us figure out what we want to take out, what we want to put in? Or is Director Davidoff's proposal do you know what I'm asking?
Yes,
Is that doable?
Yeah.
I just, wondering from staff's perspective.
Through the chair, it is better for staff to do the workshop with you and understand what to put in the bylaw, because then we'll understand the wording that we're putting in. Or else unfortunately we'll get spinning it, is maybe it's by wrong assumptions by staff, which will then dominate the conversation versus working together.
And I'm willing to poll my motion to put a new motion.
Yeah, so can we just make a motion then to direct staff to organize a workshop for the commission to discuss proposed bylaw amendments?
2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Because
Yeah.
1 is a go.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
We've dealt with one. We're not talking about it again.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion then, Pearl, is to direct staff to schedule
Well, actually, I said 2.
workshop. Hang on, let me finish.
Yeah.
To schedule a workshop to discuss items 2 and 3. And I think that's all we need to say,
Yeah, 6.7.2 and 6.7.1.
point 3.
I'm sorry, but, through the chair, which one is 6.3? Because I only saw
sorry.
two recommend.
The bottom 2 recommendations.
Oh,
So this is 6.7.1 has been dealt with, 6.7.2, and then the next, this one is 6.7.3.
thank you.
But we all know what we're talking about.
And I agree with you.
So, if we could all get back on the, so that's the motion before us. I think with the mover and the seconder have agreed to withdraw the first motion. We now have new motion to deal with items 2 and 3. Someone.
I'll
You'll
move
move it,
the new motion.
and you'll second it, and all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, well, that was simple. All right, meeting date, our next meeting is scheduled for July 1st. Sorry,
The report is another important point.
that we can cover on the workshop.
Well, that we haven't given staff direction to potentially move forward with planning for a project.
Oh.
And so I,
I'll make a motion to do that.
6.7.1.
Yes.
I'm through the chair. I
Do
don't,
you need a motion for that?
well, so there was the section that's talking about sorry, I'm trying to cover off a ton of things in these.
Yeah.
I didn't put down a fourth one because I wasn't sure if you were ready for that. So I just don't want to skip past it right now, is that you may want to direct staff to develop an RFP to get a professional to start developing a project.
You'll move that.
A yes with a caveat that I want somehow that says, you know, my intention. So whatever that looks like is that somehow we are allowing the public to be a part of that process because they may have projects and ideas that, so as long as whatever that is, we have it open to, yes, let's move it, let's get moving forward.
But okay, so it's great that you two understand what you're talking about, but this includes area J.
Oh, I just mean what we've talked about around the table is that design, I've talked about around here, some kind of design build, something that says public, that's what I'm talking about. What we've talked around this table, so I've said it, I think 4, 5 or 6 times around, I want the public to be able to have input because I feel like there's like, I get emails, I've said it around the table, right? Emails for, hey, how can we help? We might be able to do this, we might be able to do, so whatever that is, I want to make sure, that's what I'm meaning by that. I want to make sure that it is,
When people start talking in code, I don't.
there's no code, no
Okay.
code, just around the table, what we've talked about. I want to make sure it's open because I think our process in the past has got price tags that is not doable. So I
Yeah.
want to make sure it's open.
Great. Okay, so what was the motion?
Motion to give you, what do you need from that then? Do you have a?
So.
The staff be directed to draft an RFP for the construction of a new,
Sorry, so
an extension to the facility.
generally what we would do at this point in time is bring on an architect to do work with commission and the community.
Okay, so staff be directed to do an RFP to seek an architect to design
An expansion of the.
expansion of the facility.
You need to know what we're looking to expand, or you got enough clarity from us, like,
Yeah, I think in the end, the architect's gonna come back and ask you that
Okay.
question.
okay.
So Pearl, did you get that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, can someone second that, please? Without pointing it, but all those in favor? Okay, carried. Great. Okay, are we safe to move on to next meeting now?
Yes, sorry, I didn't want
You
to.
need anything else, Joe?
We want to leave that like.
No, I'm good.
So Chair, on this one, I have a suggestion maybe.
Yeah.
That July 1st is a holiday,
Yeah,
and I think we're all supposed to be with all our candidates.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
No,
We're
no,
supposed to be flipping burgers.
I will be there.
and whatnot,
I
yeah.
promised I would be there, so I will be there.
So will I.
And so could we look at July 8th and maybe a workshop on July?
You know what? So I've got company arriving on July 8th. And I can skip out for a meeting for a couple of hours, but doing a workshop on that day wouldn't work for me. Can,
I said, we should set a date now because calendars, we're all holidaying and we're not doing.
I know, can we do a doodle poll?
I prefer we did it here.
Okay.
right now.
Well, let's move the meeting date July 8th and do a doodle poll for the parks tour. Or whatever
So you're all looking at me, which is interesting.
no, well,
No,
it's your design.
So we could do the commission meeting on the 8th if you wanted. We don't have, at least in my calendar, we don't have any other meeting date. We couldn't do the workshop that you were talking about earlier. We could do that on a different date. The parks tour, we've got time for that. I
Yeah.
think we've got, we could go right through till the end of September.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't worry too much about that one, but for a workshop,
okay,
You flip it. If you say we're not gonna hold a commission meeting, but we're gonna hold a workshop.
we can do that too.
you know what, so
Sorry,
to
you
do
go.
it on July 8th will not work for me, I'm just gonna say that. I can do a meeting, but
I'm not available the last half of July. So you're pushing the workshop would just go back and keep this for you.
well, I mean, I can, yeah,
I mean, you could do.
Yeah, I'm free any other day in the first 2 weeks of July.
I propose it does the 7th, like you said, your company comes on the 8th on the Tuesday.
on the 7th.
I know it's switching the day to a Monday, which sometimes screws up your guys' calendar.
It's actually good at this moment, so.
Yeah.
On the Monday?
July.
So whenever you do the 7th, we do the workshop, and then we have some
Right,
time,
and do we want? You,
So- Brian, are you okay? Oh, sorry, you're the chair.
so I just want to be clear, would we also move the commission meeting to the 7th? Okay, I'm okay with that, as long as, yeah. My only concern would be that we have enough time to have a recommendation drafted for the commission meeting flowing from the workshop. But I think we can do that if we really put our minds to it. Commissioner Bogle, are you all
Yes.
right with,
Let me answer.
are you all right with doing a workshop and a rec commission meeting on July 7th?
Yes.
Okay,
What time?
I don't know, will there be muffins? How much time do we need?
With the trial, I'm gonna leave that up to you.
Well, you know what? So I'm of the opinion that better to have schedule more time and not use it than not have enough time. So why don't we say 9 o'clock in the morning on July 7th here?
At 12? If we need it.
And is that the workshop time?
Yeah,
And then
commission at 4.
commission at 4?
Because I think we have to keep
Okay.
that time regular so that the public knows when it is. if they want to attend.
Yeah.
Can I suggest we just block out the
They
day just in case? It takes a really long time. Let's
Yeah.
just make sure we've,
That is what I'm suggesting, that we start at 9. and
bring lunch just in case.
Well, we can even go to conception.
I want to thank you, suggestion for blocking of time, because my project manager at home has already got this penciled in. So you can actually give me a day off. That's nice.
And then we can work on cards to another time. Correspondence, we've received a letter from Alex Even. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I have a question to staff. So there's a lot of suggestions in the letter. Has staff had an opportunity to review the suggestions and have any recommendations for the commission as to what we should be or could be following up on? Through the chair?
Through the chair, Craig, are you okay to take this one?
Through the chair, I'm having
Just
a
be a
tough
couple
time
minutes.
I'm hearing the chair. Did she say the rebels?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. I honestly, it sounded like the Elks, and so I was like, I don't know if that's, so it's just the way the sound's coming through. So, you know,
Alex, I said Alex Even.
oh, yeah, it's still the fidelity of the sound in these. I don't know if it's the connection between here and Castlegar or the weather or what, but,
You're just gonna have to come in person.
yeah, and I regret Director Davidov's there. I still haven't seen him in person yet, so next time if we can coordinate it. The one thing about these requests, for especially for the Rebels, specific to Castlegar, but also with the other KAJHL franchises in Nelson and Creston, is that there is a bit of I'll say a change or a shift in the way that that league is doing business, and so each of the 3 franchises are being impacted differently. However, they are all, you know, through the guidance of the league, let's say, they are all making requests to the owners of their facilities for various amenities that are required or you know, wanted by the league for them to be able to conduct business. And so some of these we you know, some of these are fairly easy to accommodate. Some of them require some additional consideration, and even you know, when it comes to branding, for example, all 3 teams want exterior and very conspicuous branding of the league and the team, the franchise, in our facilities. And that's a conversation that we would have to have with the board, of course, as the owners of the facilities. So some of those are more difficult to make a decision on or respond to them, but some of them are pretty straightforward, like advertising, ice logos, things that are already included in the agreement that we have, the long-term agreement that we have with the Rebels. We can just apply the terms of the agreement and say yes or no to those. But we haven't gone through this with a very you know, close inspection. We were intending to sit down with each of the executives of the franchises in Nelson, Castlegar, and Creston, just to talk about their business and how it could have an impact on our facility, and certainly through the allocation process in Castlegar. The Castlegar Rebels are embedded in our allocation policy as having a high priority. So it's trying to gain some understanding into how that league is the sustainability of that league is important for us, because like I said, there's 3 franchises that are, you know, and we're in a public meeting and we've heard this, but the Nelson Leafs are being considered a tier 1 junior A team within that league. The Castlegar or the Creston Thundercats are being considered a tier 2 team within the league, but they are on a short list of potential upgrade to tier 1. And the Castlegar Rebels have been relegated to and have accepted that role of being a tier 2 franchise in that league. How that plays out for us in the future, we're not sure about. But to answer the question that was, you know, about whether we can respond to the Rebels just yet, we're not quite there. We will go through this request from them and certainly try to gain some understanding in what their intentions are, and try to also have the conversation with all three teams that operate inside of the RDCK.
This sounds like a Wrexham story. Rather than- I'm watching the whole series right now. It's like.
Okay, Commissioner Vogel, I see your hand. Unlike Director David.
Sorry.
I didn't see.
Thank you very much. My only comments would be that I like what Craig said, because the league is definitely in flux. States right in the letter that Castlegar is trying to get to tier 1 by 2026. I really think that we need to have a uniform response through the entire, like, Creston, Nelson, Castlegar. That hasn't always happened in the past, but I think it's really important that we do it now. Fully support the Rebels and their journey, but I think it would be better if we approached it, with one direction for all three franchises.
So I'll end up already.
Yeah. Take a tall break.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, through the chair, we did have as a staff, we did have a little bit of a conversation. Where's the best place? It might be that you ask to try and get the three commissions that are involved with that team, those teams, to have that conversation, because Ballrec feels like that could get so big, and that's not really gonna be impacting all the other directors.
I would hope there would be a consistent approach amongst the three facilities, though, with the three different teams. We try that, right?
Through the chair, I think staff agrees with you completely.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right, so we'll just leave that in Craig's capable hands at this point.
And others.
Just maybe a direction to staff to set up a meeting of the three impacted services, and the directors to have a discussion.
Meeting, maybe?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so someone's gonna move that staff be directed to arrange a meeting between the rec commissions for the three facilities with junior A teams.
So
Move. Oh. You got it. Good job, Andy.
Okay, so all those in favor, opposed, carried, good. Public time, is it 6:07? Is that 6:08? 6:08. Bob, do you have anything you want to ask or say? I assume you're a member of the public? No, thanks. So, there's no public in the room, no further public online, so that's public time. The next meeting will be July 7th at 4 o'clock. Someone wants to move adjournment, we're done. Yay. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Henny.
Well,
Appreciate you stepping in on a tough day. So, good night, everyone.
Enjoy the grandkids.